I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Now, it only saw one Toronto Blue Jay victory in there, and we're going to deep dive the good, the bad, and the ugly of what we saw this weekend today on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. Plus, with Jose Bautista now firmly entrenched in the level of excellence, let's consider who could be next.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. First season for me hosting the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. It's been around for a while. You probably know the previous host. Ben Verlander. I do this every time. I say Ben Verlander every time. Oh my goodness, Ben Shulman. I'm a big Ben Verlander fan, but a big Ben Shulman fan as well. Of course, yes, indeed, the son of Dan Shulman. Ben Shulman doing some huge things these days with the Toronto Blue Jays. Shout out to Ben Shulman. So he was the previous host as the Locked On podcast. Locked On Blue Jay podcast has been around for a while. This is my first year. Honored to be the host of this. Now, I've been locked on Toronto Blue Jay baseball my entire life. I will say that Toronto Blue Jay baseball, a big deal for me. It's a big deal for my family as well. So as always, I want to thank you for spending part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. The Locked On Blue Jay podcast, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to remind you, of course, this season, all the Toronto Blue Jay action available for you to catch on Sirius XM. Now, if you're taking in today's episode on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast YouTube page, hello and thank you for that. Please hit that like, leave that comment, hit that subscribe, please, and thank you if you haven't already. I want to shout out some new subscribers that I've seen recently. Again, I really hope I'm getting your name right. I just really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, so I want to shout you out. So if I'm not getting the name right, just spell it phonetically for me in the comments, please, and thank you. So shout out to Bob Bairstow, Lord Baca, Adam Squires, Dan Thwarts, Joseph I, Kelly Smith, Viru Davis, and Sean. I think it's Sean. I'm going to say Ketchko. I hope it's Ketchko, Sean. But thank you guys. Welcome. And thank you guys for hitting that subscribe as we come down the stretch of the 2023 season for your Toronto Blue Jays. And of course, to the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day. Those numbers are growing, so I certainly thank you. I've been asking the everydayers, quite a bit this season. Please help the Locked On Blue Jay podcast grow. A friend, a family member. I always joke, your Uber driver, who you see someone wearing a Blue Jay hat, who you name it. You think you know a Toronto Blue Jay fan, put the Locked On Blue Jay podcast in their hand to help it grow, please, and thank you. Now, for the second Sunday in a row and fifth Sunday this season, the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday scored double-digit runs, and they salvaged the game in this weekend series versus the Chicago Cubs. Thank goodness, right? A sweep would have been, oh boy, massively detrimental. Losing 2 out of 3 wasn't good as is, but a sweep would have been extremely detrimental. Now, for our first segment today, let's jump into some of the good, the bad, and the ugly from what we saw this weekend. The good. How could we start anywhere other than the Jose Bautista level of excellence ceremony? I do have a criticism for it coming in the bad. It's a personal criticism. We'll get to that in a second here, yes. But outside of that, everything just 2 thumbs way up. And I want to shout out Hazel May as well. Everydayers will know there's been several times during this season on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast where we've mentioned how lucky we are to have Dan Shulman and how lucky we are to have Hazel May. Outstanding job she does. Her hosting the ceremony was no exception. Great to see Jose Bautista. Wonderful to see his family being involved. I was on the Fan 590 talking Blue Jay baseball on Sunday morning with Roger Lajoie, yesterday morning, and that was something that struck both of us that we thought was really special. Both of us it really touched us how Jose Bautista was able to have his family involved in this. And Bautista, we heard Chris Bassett commenting earlier. We've heard players over the years comment that the families are the real MVPs. They're the ones taking care of everything day to day, all the behind the scene things that help the players focus in on their duty, their job at hand, right? Performing and representing Toronto Blue Jay baseball. So absolutely great to see Jose Bautista's family there. Great to see so many of the former players as well. A lot of fun there. Also in the good category from this past weekend, Whit Merrifield, 6 for 15 this past weekend, including on Sunday. He was not 2-hit, not even 3-hit. He was 4-hit Whit on Sunday. There's stolen bases in there as well. Wow, it's even if George Springer were to catch fire, would we ever see a day where Whit Merrifield wouldn't be the leadoff hitter for the Toronto Blue Jays? Now, I guess technically going forward, sure, because this is probably the end of Whit Merrifield with the Blue Jays, right? This season here, probably going to leave as a free agent at the end of the season, so Springer would be back in the leadoff spot. But I'm talking, I guess, for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, Whit Merrifield is staking claim to that leadoff spot. Brandon Belt, just 2 for 8 on the weekend, but he did have a home run and 3 walks on Sunday. I mean, Brandon Belt doing his thing, running counts full, getting at least 3 balls on him on a completely regular basis. I love the season that Brandon Belt is putting together for the Toronto Blue Jays. How about Davis Schneider? Davis Schneider just played the one game, but he had a good game, right? And he had really, really struggled since last weekend, since that incredible debut at Fenway Park. He had an 0-11 streak since then with 7 strikeouts in there. I mean, it was really bad, but 1 for 3 over the weekend, and he had a walk in there as well. So just the one game that he played, but it was his first time in front of the home crowd. So I'm happy for Davis Schneider. Speaking of happy for somebody, I thought Santiago Espinal did well this weekend. 3 for 8 at the plate. Was forced into emergency action on Sunday with the all of a sudden injury to Matt Chapman. Of course, that's going to show up in either the bad or the ugly category coming up. Oh boy. But Espinal, I thought, did a really nice job this weekend. Kevin Biggio, you talk about somebody in the good category. Kevin Biggio, 1 for 3 with a walk on Friday, 1 for 3 with a walk on Saturday. So he's on base multiple times, Friday and Saturday. He's on base 3 times on Sunday. 2 for 4 with a hit batsman on Sunday. Wow, Kevin Biggio. Last couple weeks, have we been impressed with the at-bats Kevin Biggio's put together? I don't see how you couldn't be. And I know Kevin Biggio's very polarizing, right? A lot of people, he's similar to Nate Pearson. You love him or you hate him. Well, Kevin Biggio, even if you're hating him, you've certainly got to be pleased with what you've seen these last couple of weeks from Kevin Biggio. In the good category, Dalton Varsho, record scratch. That is not an error. You did hear that correctly. I literally think we had Dalton Varsho in a good category once before, but it's been few and far between. He's normally been in the bad or the downright ugly category for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays at the plate, right? Defensively, he's been as advertised. He's been completely stellar, been completely useful and valuable defensively. Absolutely, yes. But at the plate, wow. Now, in his last 60 at-bats coming into Sunday, Dalton Varsho had 1 home run and 5 RBIs. Last 60 at-bats coming into Sunday, Varsho 1 home run and 5 RBIs. Well, on Sunday alone, yesterday alone, Dalton Varsho 1 home run and 5 RBIs. How great was it to see that? I love the swing on the home run, by the way, as well. Man, how massive would it be? You talk about a good, bad, and the ugly. You would need another category, like a massively crucial, massively important category to slot Dalton Varsho into. If you were to say, how huge would it be for Dalton Varsho to start coming through and getting that bat going for the Toronto Blue Jays as we're entering the stretch drive? I liked what we saw from Chris Bassett. I thought the Hound on the mound, I mean, the first couple batters of the 4th inning were a nightmare. It was the be-all, and it ended up being the be-all and end-all of his game. But outside of that, I liked what I saw from Chris Bassett. So way more often than not, in that Saturday start from the Hound on the mound, I liked what I saw. I've got him in the good category. Hyun-jin Ryu, oh boy, speaking of liking what you saw, I've had so many people tell me, and again, I was talking about this with Roger Lajoie, the fan, yesterday morning. So many people have been telling me that, of course, Manoah was sent down because Ryu's been so good. Well, I don't know where the Ryu's been so good has come from. I was at his first start against Baltimore. I liked what I saw from the curveball. That's the end of the list. I didn't like what I saw from Hyun-jin Ryu in that first game against Baltimore. He was doing well in that second game, but then got hurt in that Cleveland game. And that's a very lowly lineup as well. It was only 4 innings. So small sample size, lowly lineup. I wasn't super impressed. But that Baltimore team has a very good team approach, so they're tough offensively. I'm really liking what I'm seeing lately from this Chicago Cubs team and their approach as well. So Hyun-jin Ryu going 5 innings against the Cubs and being successful. Cubs have done well against lefties this season as well. I loved what I saw from Hyun-jin Ryu. And, of course, the runs that he allowed 2 runs in that first inning. That was from a Brandon Belt error. Those runs were unearned. So Hyun-jin Ryu right now, would you believe he's at 12 1/3 straight innings pitched without an earned run for the Toronto Blue Jays? Everydayers will know I did not see this coming, that Hyun-jin Ryu was actually going to play a role, play an important role, be a legitimate contributor to the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. Everydayers will tell you, I did not see that coming. Pleasantly surprised. Also in the good category, how about Bowden Francis? I thought Bowden Francis was fantastic on Friday. They saved the bullpen a bunch of innings. What did he pitch? 3 2/3 innings. He gave up 1 walk. That was it. No runs, no hits, nothing. Shout out to Bowden Francis. I loved what I saw this weekend from Eric Swanson. I thought these were two of the better outings that Eric Swanson has had in a while, and I know Hicks isn't performing really right now. Cabrera is that there's more and more depth coming to this Blue Jay bullpen right now. So Swanson getting used, a little bit more, not sparingly, but not being overused. Let's put it that way, not being overused as much as he was before. And I think it's really starting to pay dividends. I loved what I saw from Eric Swanson this weekend. And of course, the last thing I'll say under the good category, also loved what I saw from Genesis Cabrera this weekend. Only pitched the one inning, but added another inning with no earned runs allowed. Genesis Cabrera's allowed 3 runs as a Toronto Blue Jay. All 3 were unearned. I mean, this guy is in the good category. More deep diving, the good, the bad, and the ugly from this past weekend. And reminder that the Blue Jays are off today, but all their action this season is available on SiriusXM. Now, I wanted to mention that buying tickets to your favorite sporting events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're about to have. Everydayers will know I've used Game Time a few times this season. Haven't been to a Toronto Blue Jay game in years. Don't really like going to the games all that much, but I've used the Game Time app several times to get tickets this season. It's made going, more enjoyable for me. I love the renovations and everything. I wanted to see all that, of course. Yes, indeed. But the ease of use for the Game Time app, that's why I keep coming back to it. I mean, I really like you get the images of your seats before you buy, so I know what to expect before I arrive. And you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. It's 2 taps and you're all set. And the tickets are sent right to your phone. So you're not digging through your email. Which email address did I use? None of that fumbling going on that I would be horrible with, right? The fact that it's so easy to use is really, really big for me. That's why I keep using it. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets, on last minute tickets as well, for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater. I mean, you name it. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's going to get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Going to have to turn our attention to the bad category. Oh, boy. You lose 2 out of 3 at home, there's going to be some in the bad category. Now, first of all, remember I talked about the Jose Bautista scheduling, yeah, right? Or the Jose Bautista ceremony, and of course, big picture wise, that's in the good category. That's in the great category. That's in the special category. Very yes. But in the bad category, and maybe this is just a personal thing, why on earth are you starting that ceremony at 3 p.m. Eastern for a 3:07 scheduled first pitch? I mean, my goodness, and the Blue Jays do this all the time. That's part of why this is on my radar. It's part of why I'm frustrated about this, because the Blue Jays do this all the time. Now, I wonder if we notice it because we're part of the Blue Jays fan base. Like, I wonder if other teams are nightmare with these sort of scheduling things as well. I don't know, but I definitely know that the Toronto Blue Jays are a nightmare when it comes to these sort of scheduling things. My goodness, holy moly. So that's going in the bad category. Also in the bad category from this weekend, that Friday game, that Apple podcast on our broadcast on Friday, I'm way in the minority in that I've enjoyed the Apple I keep saying podcast. I've enjoyed the Apple broadcasts this season. I know I'm in the massive minority on that, but my gosh, this Friday, I mean, these guys, they were praising the Blue Jays for having a good team hitting approach. Since when? They talked about how many times they come up with big hits and they have a lot of good at-bats with runners in scoring position. Since when? And they talked about the fact that the Blue Jays, they're willing to take their walks. They won't chase. They won't expand the strike zone. They're willing to take that walk and pass the baton to the next batter. Since when? One of the major factors for the bald head coming through on your TV screen right now is how horrible, how putrid, how pathetic the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays are in those situations, in those circumstances. So Apple broadcast going in the bad books. Jose Barrios, for the first time in a long time, we've got Jose Barrios in the bad category here. He didn't even make it out of the 5th inning. 6 runs, 4 of them were earned, 9 hits through 5 innings for Jose Barrios. I mean, we've seen this, that struggle from him probably about 4 or 5 times this season, about, half as many as we saw, maybe a third as many as we saw from him last season, right? So we know the improvements have been there, but this was one of those rare, in 2023, one of those rare bad games for Jose Barrios. Now, I'll say this, also in the bad category, I did not like what I saw this weekend from Jordan Hicks. I did not like what I saw this weekend from Nate Pearson. Jordan Hicks, just 3 strikeouts so far as a Toronto Blue Jay against 2 walks. With that stuff, nowhere close to a strikeout per inning, and only 1 more strikeout than walks. With that stuff, that was 3 for 3 in save opportunities. Okay, I mean, we have to acknowledge that, yes. And if you remember, every day as well recall when we first made the Jordan Hicks trade, and we had a segment on Locked On Blue Jays podcast about it, I mentioned that I love, I mean, what's not to love about his stuff? But be forewarned, Blue Jay fans, there are no 3 up, 3 down innings in there for Jordan Hicks. That's not the pitcher that he is. But what makes him so good is his stuff is so electric that it's tough to string together multiple hits against him to get that rally. Well, the Cubs didn't really string together multiple hits against them in the Saturday loss. Jordan Hicks lost that game on Saturday, giving up the 2. But it was the fact that it was 2 extra base hits, right? 2 doubles that the Cubs would take that 5-4 lead and win that game. So overall, boy, oh boy, I don't know where I am on Jordan Hicks just yet. Again, he's paid some dividends in that. Look at the innings he's taken. He's definitely helped an Eric Swanson reduce that workload, for example. So, but Jordan Hicks from this weekend in the bad category. Now we get to the ugly category. One of the ugliest things, and I think the euphoria of how magical the weekend was from Jose Bautista level of excellence, memory road standpoint. I think that this took a major backseat. I think this would have been a much bigger story otherwise. But Hagen Danner, 24-year-old rookie, the catcher converted to be a high upside reliever, makes his major league debut. Has friends in the house, has family in the house, his girlfriend, his family, all there to see it, and he lasts all of 1 batter. He must have been sick beyond belief when he had to call out the trainer after, I believe it was 7 pitches. He knew it was that bad, that my major league debut is all gone up in smoke. I have to come out of this game. I've got an injury. And you hear Dan Shulman talking about it on the broadcast as well. It does not sound like it's something insignificant. It doesn't sound like a quick heal for Hagen Danner. Just, as I said, the reason I think that I'm thinking this isn't a huge story, at least bigger than it has been, is because there was just so much euphoria surrounding this weekend from a Toronto Blue Jay, nostalgic standpoint. But Hagen Danner, I'm sick to my stomach for that young man. Danny Jansen. Now, this isn't anything he did that landed him in the ugly category, of course, but Danny Jansen on Sunday for the 4th and the 5th time in 7 games got hit by a pitch. Pardon me. In the last 7 games, Danny Jansen has been hit by 5 pitches. What are we talking about here? That is stunning. And if you saw the game on Sunday, that 4th and 5th, how many times did it come close to being a 6 and a 7? Like, holy cow. He's going to be pitched inside. That's the book in him. That's how you're going to get Danny Jansen out. So we're going to see hit batsmen. We're going to see pitchers miss their spot, in particular in a pitch clock era where the pitchers, so many times are making that pitch where they're not fully, completely set and ready to throw that pitch. So the hit batsmen for Danny Jansen are going to happen. But 5 in 7 games, for me, I mean, that is eye pop emoji. My goodness. I've got Matt Chapman in the ugly category. Matt Chapman just 1 for 7 on the field, and then off the field, coming into Sunday's game, he gets his middle finger caught between a rack of weights, has to come out. He can't play now on Sunday. We'll see how long that's going to be a problem. And Matt Chapman, I mean, he just 242 with 3 home runs since the All-Star break. Alejandro Kirk, 1 for 8 over the weekend, firmly in the ugly category. On July 29th, so a couple weeks back, Alejandro Kirk had 3 hits in that game. It was his 3rd game since the All-Star break with at least 3 hits. Remember Alejandro Kirk coming out of the All-Star break was swinging it fine. We were all rejoicing. Oh my gosh, look who's back. Alejandro Kirk, the hitting machine is back. Oh my goodness, this could be huge for the Blue Jays in the second half of the season. Well, since that 3-hit game on July 29th, 7 for 36 since. In these last couple weeks, 1 double and 2 RBIs. That's it. Wow. Alejandro Kirk in the ugly category. Paul DeJong, my goodness. Paul DeJong in the ugly category. Gets a hit in his final at-bat on Sunday. Gave a very half-hearted, that new celebration the Jays have, because I think he's just so frustrated with where he is at the plate right now. 1 for 8 on the weekend. He's 3 for 39 as a Blue Jay. 3 singles. 3 cheesy little singles. That's it. in 39 at bats as a Toronto Blue Jay. Oh boy. We know it's always going to be, defense is always going to be his calling card right now. I shouldn't say always, because there was a time when Paul DeJong was hitting 20, 30 home runs, but those days are definitely past us right now. Right now, it's going to be about the defense for Paul DeJong, but still, my goodness, Paul would still like to see some offensive production, please and thank you. And then finally, in the ugly category, I've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just 3 for 13 this weekend. So already I don't like that. 3 for 13, that's a 231 batting average. Already I'd say that's ugly. It's now you add in the fact it's Slim Daddy Vladdy. That's nowhere near his potential. Now I'd definitely say it's ugly. And you add in the fact, and this is really the main reason I've got this in the ugly category, not just in the bad category. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. goes 3 for 13 this weekend and loses just 0.01 points off of his season batting average. That's how bad it's been for Vlad this season. That's how massively below his potential he's hitting this season. He could go 3 for 13. He could hit 231 over the course of a weekend, played all 3 games, hit 231, and he loses 0.01. That's all he loses. Sorry, 0.001. Sorry, 0.001 is what he loses off of his batting average. Are you kidding? And Vlad hitting just 241 since the All-Star break. These things I'm describing right now are ugly. Now, since 2013, the Toronto Blue Jays have only added 3 people into the level of excellence, the third coming yesterday, or 2 days ago, right? Saturday, Jose Bautista. And I see a lot of talk about, who could be the next inductee into the level of excellence for the Toronto Blue Jays. So let's go through some of the names that I keep hearing coming up here, and I'm going to tell you who I'm really hoping for. So the first person I'm hearing left, right, and center is Tom Henke. Tom Henke. Can a case be made for Tom Henke? Oh boy. How about the best ERA for any reliever in franchise history, career-wise, best whip for relievers career-wise, best hits per 9 innings in franchise history, 217 saves, by far the most in franchise history. He struck out the most per 9 innings. That stat, strikeouts per 9 innings, best in franchise history. There have been 4 closers ever for the Toronto Blue Jays that have saved at least 100 games as a Toronto Blue Jay. Jordan Romano right now at 89, so he'll become the 5th, I would think, very likely anyway. I don't think he's going to get 11 more saves this season, especially considering he's not even back from the injury yet. I know that's soon, but I don't think he gets 11 more this season. So probably at some point next season, we'll see Jordan Romano in that Century Club. Billy Koch, my favorite Blue Jay closer ever, is in that Century Club. Now, Dwayne Ward is second all-time for Toronto Blue Jays in saves. He's at 121. Again, Tom Henke's at 217. So Tom Henke, almost 100 career saves more as a Toronto Blue Jay, more than the next Toronto Blue Jay. He twice saved a career high 34 games. Now that's part of, believe it or not, I think that's part of what goes maybe against Tom Henke here. I mean, there have been numerous, there have been 9 seasons, not from a Blue Jay closer, where they had more than 34 saves. And heck, I mean, even if Romano can come back here, if Romano gets 7 more saves this season, then that bumps Tom Henke's best seasons as the Toronto Blue Jay to the 10th best as far as seasons, as far as saves goes for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, in the playoffs, in 1985, as a rookie, Tom Henke pitched in games 1 and 2 of the ALCS. Now, the Blue Jays won both of those games, but the Kansas City Royals in 85, they did hit Tom Henke around in those first 2 games. 3 runs on 5 hits with 2 walks. Now, and part of that was he gave up a home run to a very light-hitting Pat Sheridan. Now, I'm bringing up the playoff stuff here because again, we just saw there's some legit things on Tom Henke's resume there. What I'm saying, what I feel anyway, my opinion, why he's not in that level of excellence just yet is he did not have that signature moment in the playoffs. So there's a couple moments in the playoffs there where he actually got hit. Now, after that, and again, he's a rookie in 85. Now, after that, he would make 14 more career appearances for the Toronto Blue Jays. He would have a 1-0 record. He would convert 5 of the 6 saves. And in those 15 2/3 innings after those first 2 games, 1 run on 5 hits. Now, 7 walks. That's a problem. That's way too many. 11 strikeouts. But even with all the base runners, even with all the traffic he allowed on the base paths, just allowed 1 run in the next 14 appearances that he made as a reliever for the Toronto Blue Jays. In 1992, Blue Jays win the World Series while Henke pitches in 7 games for the Blue Jays in the 92 playoffs. Blue Jays won all 7 of those games. Now, what's not to like here, right, Craig? How is it not Tom Henke, the next one going there? And Craig, how is Tom Henke not even your pick? Because Tom Henke is not my pick for the next person in the Blue Jay level of excellence. And again, that signature moment in the playoffs. In fact, look how close he came to having it. And could we say he, in fact, blew it? A lot of goodness, right? 14 appearances after those first two where he got hit, and you only allow one run. But what was the one run? Game 6, 1992 World Series. Blue Jays up 3-2, and in the bottom of the ninth inning, remember it's in Atlanta, Game 6, the bottom of the ninth inning, the Blue Jays are up 2-1. Here comes Tom Henke. Can he get the save? We know the Blue Jays won in the bottom of the 11th. It's Otis Nixon bunting to Mike Timlin. Timlin throws it to Joe Carter. It's an iconic moment in Blue Jay history. For the first time in Major League Baseball history, the World Series flag flies north of the border. That was the call on the TV. That's all iconic. Tom Henke missed his chance. Could we honestly say blew his chance to have his iconic moment and really cement himself in Blue Jay lore? Bottom of the ninth, Henke would give up a leadoff single that would be bunted over to second base. Then following a walk to Lonnie Smith, Henke would get Francisco Cabrera to line out to left field. So now we have 2 out. Blue Jays 1 out away from the World Series, first World Series in Blue Jay franchise history. Tom Henke 1 out away from his signature moment. Henke goes swing and a miss for strike 1, and then a call strike 2 and a beautiful fastball on the inside corner 2. Otis Nixon. Otis Nixon was destined to be the final out one way or the other in this game. Yeah, it was Otis Nixon. But then as it's 0-2, so Tom Henke has the Blue Jays 1 strike away from their first World Series championship. Tom Henke has himself 1 strike away from his signature Blue Jay moment. Going to cement himself in Blue Jay lore, going to cement himself in Blue Jay history. Otis Nixon shoots the 0-2 pitch between short and third into left field for a base hit. The Blue Jay left fielder, Candy Maldonado, overthrows everybody at the plate, and the Blue Jays, so it's tied now at 2-2, and the Blue Jays are lucky to quickly retrieve Maldonado's insanely bad throw, went over everything, all the way to the backstop there. The Blue Jays were lucky to retrieve that quickly to keep Lonnie Smith the potential winning run at third base in this now 2-2 game. I'll give Henke credit. He does get Ron Gant to fly out to Devo to end that inning, and then we go to extra innings. In the 10th inning, Henke would be taken out 1 batter in for Jimmy Key, and then of course, as we say there, the Mike Timlin, the finale in the bottom of the 11th. So Tom Henke that close to his signature moment for the Blue Jays and for himself, it eluded him. Now, speaking of Jimmy Key, that's another name I hear left, right, and center. Well, Jimmy Key, 116 wins, 81 losses. Pretty good for the Toronto Blue Jays. 3.42 ERA for the Toronto Blue Jays, and his 1.20 WHIP is the best for any Toronto Blue Jay starter ever. So right out the gate, Jimmy Key's making a case for this, right? 2-time All-Star, 1987. My goodness, 1987 was, except for the years Roger Clemens had. 1987 was as good as years as Roy Halladay too, I guess, had a few in there as well, of course. But 87 was an amazing season, certainly the best season for any lefty in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history, and that includes David Wells, who had Wells won 20 games for the Blue Jays one time. But 87, Jimmy Key, he led the league with a 2.76 ERA. He led the league in ERA plus. He led the league in WHIP. He led the league with the fewest hits allowed per 9 innings. He was second that season in Cy Young voting. And just as a side note, really insane Cy Young voting that season was all Toronto Blue Jays. He finished second to Roger Clemens. Clemens was winning back-to-back Cy Youngs at that time, to future Blue Jay Roger Clemens. Third in Cy Young voting was future Blue Jay Dave Stewart. Fourth in Cy Young voting in 87 was former Blue Jay Doyle Alexander. Sixth in Cy Young voting in 87 was future Blue Jay Frank Viola. And ninth in Cy Young voting in 87 was future Blue Jay Jack Morris. So past and present Blue Jays littering all over the Cy Young voting in 1987, and Jimmy Key right there, number 2. As a rookie in 1984, he was a reliever, but Jimmy Key really burst on the scene as a top-of-the-rotation, reliable starter in 1985, 14-6 with a 3.00 ERA, and he was an all-star. 1985, that's the first season the Toronto Blue Jays made the playoffs. So, Jimmy Key had himself some signature moments. Now, 1990 was the worst of his 9 seasons with the Blue Jays, 13-7 record, 4.25 ERA. So all his other seasons, he was a starter for 8 seasons with the Blue Jays. All of his other seasons, his ERA was in the 2s or in the 3s. His worst season as a Toronto Blue Jay was a 13-7 record with a 4.25 ERA. This guy was good for the Blue Jays. This guy was good for the Jays. 1990. Now, you talk about the signature moment. I really think all that goodness with the Blue Jays, but he left the Blue Jays after 92, and in 93 and 94, he was a New York Yankee. He was an all-star both of those seasons, combined to go 35-10 both of those seasons. It could have been even better, by the way. 94 was a strike, so that 35-10 could have been even better. In 93 and 94 for the Yankees, he finished 11th and 6th in MVP voting, first time he'd ever had MVP votes, and he finished 4th and 2nd in Cy Young voting. Think of the laundry list of accomplishments we just laid out for Jimmy Key as a Toronto Blue Jay. You're talking about the Toronto Blue Jay level of excellence. What if he was a Yankee? 93 and 94 were the best seasons he had, well, maybe other than 87. But what if he was a Blue Jay, beg your pardon? What if he was a Blue Jay during those 2 years where he was a Yankee, gave all that goodness, gave those 2 all-star seasons, gave those 35 wins to the Yankees? If those had been attached to his Blue Jay stats, I think Jimmy Key, honestly, I would say Jimmy Key would already be in the level of excellence. He's 4th all-time for wins. He's just 12 behind Jim Clancy for 3rd, and he's 32 behind Roy Halladay for 2nd all-time in wins. After he left the Blue Jays, Jimmy Key won 70 more games. So if he could have had a little bit more of a run with the Toronto Blue Jays, I would submit to you that he would already be in the level of excellence. Now, who am I advocating for as the next person honored in the Toronto Blue Jay level of excellence? Well, we are out of time today, so be sure to check back into the Locked On Blue Jay podcast tomorrow for my take. Go Jays, go, and we'll talk tomorrow.